Hello and welcome. How can Sudan really find lasting peace without full participation in its first multi-party election in nearly a quarter of a century? A rare chance for progress is in jeopardy as the main opposition parties withdraw from the vote due in less than a week. Well, the latest crisis was triggered after Sudan's President al-Bashir dismissed opposition demands to postpone the vote because they believe that going ahead with the polls scheduled for April the 11th would be, quote, a disaster. They've accused the Bashir government of trying to rig the election. The biggest opposition party in the south, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement, or SPLM, says its presidential candidate, Yasser Arman, will not participate because of electoral irregularities. For his part, President Bashir has threatened to scuttle a highly anticipated referendum on southern Sudan's independence if the SPLM carries out its boycott. President Bashir's National Congress Party has ruled Sudan in a coalition with the SPLM since both sides ended a 22-year civil war with a peace deal in 2005. And many see successful elections as a key part of that process. So today we ask, will Sudan slip into another cycle of violence if its political process fails? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. You can send an SMS or an email. We'll take your phone calls on the show as well. Joining me now from Washington, D.C. is Dr. Hashim El-Tineh, founder and president of the Salam Sudan Foundation and a former presidential candidate. Also with him in the D.C. studio is Ezekiel Lol-Gatkuoth, the U.S. head of mission of the government of Southern Sudan, who represents the Sudan People's Liberation Movement. Gentlemen, I welcome you to the show. And Dr. Hashim, if I could start with you and ask you basically what chance you see for a fair and free election, considering, you know, it's been nearly a quarter of a century. There are generations who don't even know what an election is.
Fair and free, that's difficult to see happening. We know that democracy is the worst system of government compared to, but better than all the rest. So, I mean, this is a very difficult period in Sudanese history. It's clear that to everybody in the Sudan and abroad that these elections are a de facto elections that will bring the incumbent al-Bashir to power and legitimize his regime. And I doubt that these elections will be fair and
why hold? Free, yeah. So let me sorry to interrupt you. We have satellite delay. Why hold the elections if it's basically in such a situation? I know, of course, President Bashir wants to go ahead with them, but what chance is there then there could be some kind of postponement? Is there any way of making sure these elections can be delayed?
Well, the fact of the matter is that the whole political scene in the Sudan is a mess. And I feel that all the political elites and the political parties and the players are part of the problem. We have to look at the bigger picture. The elections are stipulated in the Comprehensive Peace Agreement signed by the National Congress Party and the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in Kenya in January 2005. This is an important step, and basically it's a roadmap to taking Sudan in a calm way to democracy and peace and development. So this is the context in which we should see these elections. So they are important in that way. From the larger picture, they are very important for the Sudan. If we accept this,
yeah. Dr. Hashim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if we accept
this, I just wanted to at this stage bring in. Let me get back to you in just a second, sir. No, the reason I want to bring in Mr. Ezekiel Lol-Gatkuoth on this because the SPLM was part of that deal, the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, in 2005, and basically this election, as Dr. Hashim has said, is there really to try to consolidate the peace by pulling out. Aren't you risking basically another plunge into civil strife and conflict and more war in Sudan?
Thank you very much for having me. I don't think we are heading that direction yet, because in Naivasha, when we have the agreement signed, it was meant to address two issues. One is to transform Sudan through this election. The second one is to go for a referendum. The people of Southern Sudan wanted to confirm if they are going to be a part of this Sudan or they are going to secede in 2011. But as of now, it is very clear that 98% of the people of Southern Sudan are going to vote for separation in 2011. So these elections was meant to transform Sudan into a better Sudan for all of us, a democratic transformation for everybody. But now, since we have started the process of electoral registration and the process of the election itself, it is very clear that the election has been looted, basically. You know, the registration of the people are still happening now in northern Sudan. People are being registered to vote, and the registration has stopped last year in December 7th. Also in Darfur, you cannot have election in Darfur because of the ongoing crisis that we are having. Even the ballots for the presidential elections, they are being printed in Khartoum, fully controlled by the NCP, the National Congress Party. So we have realized that it is not good for us to continue in this election, because you will be basically legitimizing Bashir to continue ruling by default.
But let me ask you, though, doesn't the pulling out of your candidate, Yasir Arman, doesn't it actually give the chance to President Bashir to turn around and say, well, it's a fair election, the opposition doesn't have the stomach to fight, they're not willing to contest, therefore it's the will of the people that I become president again?
If you look at it from the beginning, Bashir wanted to win by all means, because he's an indicted president he's actually needed by the ICC. He has to win this election by all means. So what we have decided as SPLM, as a party, is that we will continue to have election in the South. It is very important for us to have the election in the South, because the referendum is coming in 8 months, and we have to have a legitimate government. Of course, His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit will be overwhelmingly elected in the South, and so that we prepare the people of Southern Sudan to go for a referendum, which is going to actually lead into independence in 2011. So for us, we are participating in the South, and also we are participating in the North, especially from the governors and all the way down. For the presidential race, we have decided that we are not going to participate, because it is rigged and it is looted already.
Now, Dr. Hashim Al-Tineh, if I can get you back in again, sir, at this stage, with the way the South views the election and how the referendum is far more important, is there any need to have this election? I mean, is there any point if the South isn't even interested in taking part in this election?
As I said earlier, the election is important because it's part of the comprehensive peace agreement, which brought peace to the South. We shouldn't forget that, and it's a very important achievement, Sudanese, African, and also for the international community, stopping the longest civil war in Africa. We have now a South that's more or less governing itself. So this is, we shouldn't lose sight of that. And I think the focus really should be on peace. You know, as someone who is advocating for peace and justice, I feel that people should be committed to a serious implementation of the comprehensive peace agreement. People in the North and in the South, in every part of Sudan. And I think it's very good that the international community is also focusing on that, because that's the ultimate, that's the way, that's the roadmap that can actually, despite the mess that we see now, and the limitations, you know, of the politicians and the political players, as I said earlier, there is no other alternative but to go ahead, you know, let the elections take place with all their faults, because that is, you see, politics is the art of the possible. Mr. Khan, politics is the art of the possible. The possible is messy. It doesn't come to our aspirations and ambitions. It doesn't respond to the aspirations of the Sudanese people or anybody. But that's what is possible now, because we are all hostage to the powers that be, and that's reality.
Okay, let me. All right, Dr. Hashim, let me put this question to Mr. Ezekiel Lol Gatquote. This came in from a viewer, if I can put this to you. It came in from a viewer in Nigeria, in Abuja. And Ibrahim Sani wrote in saying, there will be no violence if the elections are free and fair. And then there's another one that's come in from Wasim Khan in Pakistan, which says the inefficiency of leadership leaves no doubt that these elections will be massively rigged and largely manipulated. So obviously there's a lot of skepticism, but there is the hope that if they were free and fair, there would be no violence. What do you expect to happen on election day?
Of course, people are concerned. The SPLM is concerned about the election itself, because it was meant to transform Sudan, as I said it before. Of course, there will be some, incidences here and there, because those who want to participate freely and fairly, if they are denied their rights to participate, then definitely there will be some incidences here and there. But I don't think that there will be serious violence in Sudan. Of course, for the people of Southern Sudan,
okay,
if I can add, it is very important for them to have the referendum. His Excellency, as I said it before, President Salva Kiir Mayardit, with his Vice President Riek Machar, and the leadership of the SPLM, they are preparing now the people of Southern Sudan to go for the referendum. And this one has to be on time. It has to be January 9th, 2011. And this is what will return us to war.
Yeah, I'll get onto the referendum.
Okay.
I'll get onto the referendum when we return. We're going to have to take a very short break.
Thank you.
We have more of our discussion on Sudan's pending election in just a moment. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing a growing political crisis in Sudan, which may threaten the country's first election in 24 years. Opposition parties say they'll boycott the polls, alleging electoral irregularities by President Bashir's party and demanding an investigation before the vote goes ahead. Well, examining what's at stake, I'm talking with Dr. Hashim El-Tineh, founder and president of the International Peace Quest Institute, which works on improving relations among the Sudanese and between the governments in Khartoum and Washington. Also in DC is Ezekiel Lol Gatquote, the head of mission of the government of South Sudan in the U.S. We have a caller on the line from Nebraska in the U.S., and that's Goya. Goya, go ahead with your question, please.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Mr.
Hi.
Ezekiel. Yeah.
Morning.
Good morning.
Please, hi. Thanks.
My question
Go
is,
ahead, please.
why should our party, the SPLM, pull out of election? The first election in 24 years in Sudan, and this election was meant to prepare the ground for coming up of referendum that is coming up in 2010. I mean in 2011. Why should we pull out?
Okay, listen, let me get that to, yeah, that makes sense. Actually, we'll get Ezekiel Gatquote to answer that. In this perspective, Mr. Ezekiel, the issue is this, that if you do pull out now and the election is not, in your eyes, legitimate, what do you expect to happen? Even if the president did delay the election, how confident are you that you could reach a stage where the SPLM and other parties, opposition parties, would be happy with the situation enough to say, yes, we want to take part?
Of course, anybody has a right to withdraw from the elections if you feel like the process is not conducive for you to continue. And that's what we have assessed. We have realized that the election is not going to be free and fair, and it is not even going to be credible, because President Bashir has rigged the election already, or pre-rigged the election. But to us, we are just pulling out from the presidential race. We are continuing in the south, and we are also continuing in the north. And it is not going to, election is not linked with the referendum at all.
Although the President Bashir has said he would make sure the referendum doesn't happen, how worried are you that the referendum can still go ahead if the election doesn't go as planned in April? This month.
Mr. Khan, you have to also realize that in the CPA there is no link between the two. Even if there is no election at all, the referendum has to be conducted, because this is what we have been fighting for the last 50 years or more. The Southerners, they have been fighting and dying. We have lost 2.5 million people because of this. And this cannot be.
A quick question, sir. Do you think the president has the power to scupper the referendum? Do you think he has the power to prevent the referendum from happening in the South?
He has no power to do that, because this is an international agreement witnessed by more than 17 countries, and it is guaranteed by the people of Sudan. Even if the election, as I said it before, even if the election is not there, the referendum has to be conducted on time, or you will risk returning the Sudan to war.
Okay, we have on the line Rebecca in Virginia. Thanks for joining us. What's your question, please?
I just had a question. As far as the referendum goes, my initial question was about what if the referendum did not go through. And now, initially, if they do not let the South have a referendum, what are the odds and what is the outcome that will come to that?
Okay. Dr. Hashim, I guess it's a similar question to you. What chance is there the president could hurt that referendum plan for the South? And the other issue, I guess, also is how much is this going to become a battle over the oil wealth that exists in the South and the fear that Khartoum will lose control of the oil?
Well, I think I agree with Ezekiel that the president has no power of, preventing the referendum, because the referendum is part of the comprehensive peace agreement that is signed by both the National Congress Party and the SPLM, but also the IGAD countries and the international community. So this is just like the elections. The elections have to take place, and then the referendum has to take place. These are stipulated in the comprehensive peace agreement, and both of them are designed to take Sudan from where it is, a dictatorship, one-party state, or now two-party state, to a transition to democracy. And you can't transition to democracy if you don't practice democracy. And the elections are, with all their limitations, their problems.
But Dr. Hashim, the question is that the risk that Khartoum will not be willing to give up on the oil-rich lands in the South.
Well, I mean, these are all issues that people are supposed to negotiate in a civilized and civil way and find solutions for. This is the whole idea of democracy.
We're talking about a country that had 2 decades of war. Can you have that kind of negotiation?
Well, I mean, that's where we want the country to go. This is why there was this. The CPA proved that when people sit down together and discuss seriously and honestly their issues, they can arrive at peaceful solutions that they can live with and can take them a step further away from self-destruction towards reconstruction and rebirth. So we have an example in the CPA. This is a very concrete example. Why do we always focus on the negative? Why don't we focus on the positive? And so with using the CPA as an example, I don't see why the Darfur issue was not resolved months ago. I don't see why the oil and the wealth sharing in terms of the oil between the north and south cannot be resolved. So I mean, all these issues can be resolved.
Right.
That's why, by the way, that's why I wanted to run, but I didn't. I decided not to run because I could see that the elections will never be fair. The elections will never be credible. But I also understand that the elections have to take place with all their faults.
Let me ask Mr. Ezekiel. Let me ask Mr. Ezekiel this question about the potential for the U.S. to be a player in this. President Obama has made statements that he wants to make Sudan something of a priority, that he sees it as a priority. What role do you see the U.S. playing in this, and what chances there, or what belief do you have that Sudan does have some kind of priority status in America's foreign policy?
Of course, we like to really extend our appreciation as the representative of the people of Southern Sudan here in the U.S. We do really appreciate the U.S. government, the people of the United States, and the churches, because without them, the CPA itself, or the agreement that we have signed in Naivasha, would have not been realized. So having President Bush, the former president of the United States of America, who oversee or the process, we do really appreciate him, and also the same thing with President Obama. We are really, really appreciative to them, and I'm sure they still have the leverage, which can see soft landing in 2011. It's Scott Gresham, the special envoy to Sudan. He's in Sudan now, and he's trying to help. And I'm sure with the support from the U.S. and also international community to make sure that we have soft landing in 2011 is very important. Let me just add one thing about the 2011 and the issue of oil.
Just briefly, sir. Yeah, please.
The issue of oil. Of course, we are negotiating now with the National Congress Party how we can have a peaceful divorce in 2011 with the issue of oil, with the issue of pipeline, with the issue of citizenship and debts and assets. These are the things that we are going to agree upon with the help from the IGAD Partners Forums or the neighboring countries in Africa, the UN and the US and all the international community members. And I'm sure we will get an agreement.
Mr. Ezekiel? Yeah.
Okay, let
listen,
me jump here.
I'm so sorry to have to stop you. There's so many questions to ask on this.
I would
sorry,
like
Dr. Hashim, unfortunately, I have to stop you because we're out of time, sir. But I do hope we'll continue to follow this story and hope to get you back to discuss what happens with this election. And thank you for being with us. Now, remember, you can watch a podcast of the show on iTunes. This week, we're featuring a discussion on the carbon cap and trade system. Does it help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and help poorer countries make money by selling their credits? Or is the system being exploited to the detriment of the environment? On the next show, is the United Kingdom heading for a hung parliament? My guests include Labour's Lord Swaraj Paul on the upcoming vote and what the political landscape of Britain may look like after Election Day. Make sure you tune in for that. From me and the teams in DC and in London, goodbye. We'll see you next time.